as somebody who suffered abuse as a child, you felt a sense of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And can you talk a bit more about that? Because I think a lot of other young people facing abuse are probably feeling the same sense of loneliness.
First part of the loneliness is that you feel a lot of shame when you go through abuse, especially when it's a parent, because I think you have this belief that there's something wrong with you. So you don't want anyone to know about what's happening, because if it's a parent abusing you, then you must be doing something wrong. So you hide the abuse. The second part of loneliness, I think, is that when you're told not to tell anybody about what's happening, because now you're like, even other people in your family is embarrassed by you. You don't think that they're embarrassed by the person doing it. You think they're embarrassed by you. And the third part is that there's been moments where I was abused, and straight after that people visited, or we went to visit someone else, and you're sitting there and you're alone in your pain. You've just experienced, a beating, you have blue marks on you, and you're sitting there silently smiling, pretending that everything's okay. That sense of aloneness, even though you're surrounded by so many people, you feel alone in that pain. For me, it was going through what I was feeling emotionally and physically, and not being able to share that with anyone else.
Having to sit in public and smile in public with the pain being held privately.
Mm-hmm.
How did you manage to do that? And how has that impacted on what you do today?
Even when we were visiting someone, or if someone was visiting us right after I was beaten, and I'd sit there and I would evaluate my mom. How was she able to be normal? This is all just taken place. There was chaos in my house moments ago. And then I watched how she smiled and laughed. And I watched also how people was reacting to her. Were they believing this whole act she was putting on? Did they pick up on things? Did they, and so it made me my sense of awareness was like really high. And I think having that awareness with people has helped me in my career today, where I'm able to read people really easily. It helps me to be able to uncover things that people are sometimes not willing to uncover.
The one chapter I read in your book where you talk about your abuser coming home in the evenings, and you would listen. Did the car pull up quietly, or did it screech to a halt?
Mm-hmm.
Did the door close normally, or was it slammed closed? It all must have created immense trauma as you were waiting for the abuser to come home. And that obviously now plays forward in helping you feel people.
And I think not just helping me feel people, but also feel what's coming. I have this heightened sense of awareness because I needed to.
And your intuition.
I needed to have it. That was the way my body prepared for what was to come. Was listening to all of these things, because if the car screeched and came to a halt suddenly, I knew, okay, that was the first sign to me. The stones, I could actually, even as I sit here, I can hear the way the stones move together. And that said to me, in that moment, it said to me, oh no, I don't think he's okay. This is not going to go down well. Something's wrong. And down to the heaviness of the footsteps. If he was trying to get up the stairs really fast and he was out of breath, I knew that meant something's coming. He's really upset now. Every single sound, breath, tone of voice mattered, because it was whether I was going to be prepared for what was coming, or whether I wasn't going to be prepared. And if I wasn't going to be prepared, I'd be more hurt. If I was prepared, my armor was up, I was ready for it. I think for many years in my life, it actually haunted me, because every time I'd hear those sounds, even if it was other people making those sounds, my heart would start to beat, and I would put up the armor immediately to protect myself. Same way, it has helped me in being able to evaluate who can be trusted and who can't. I became exceptionally good at being able to understand that. I would enter people's homes and I could tell, okay, something just happened here. I can't obviously always tell people that, hey, what happened? But yeah, I can feel it. For me, it has been both a blessing and a curse. It helped me to be able to read people, but for many years in my life, it was also a deterrent. I think you remember something is all these little things that most people, I think, don't realize what it does to someone that has gone through that kind of abuse is that it actually puts you in a space where you constantly, the soldier, the police officer, protecting yourself continuously. You don't know any different. And I think for those who have not gone through it, I think they look at it as just a hiding. It is not just a hiding. It's not just that. Remember, this is the person that's supposed to protect you, the person that's supposed to love you. That's the father's role. And then when you have that same person that you have to protect yourself from, it creates a fear in you that if the person that's supposed to protect you can't do it, then who can? And so you learn that you have to protect yourself. You have to be that person. And that was one of the things that I got out of it, was learning how to take care of myself, because I had to. But then I had to. Now I choose to take care of myself. But we cannot undermine what abuse does to somebody. And I don't think we should undermine that.
They said that after the abuse, you're told to keep it a secret. But at the same time, you've been told this has been done to you because they love you. How do you reconcile those two total contradictions?
And I think this is why you go into self-blame, because you told that this person is doing it because they love you, but don't tell anybody. So it means that they doing the loving, you doing the hurting. So you mustn't tell anybody, because you are the cause of your own hurt, your own pain. And so that is really something that messes with your mind, because as a kid, you don't understand. You can't make sense of these things. These are not things that you know how to make sense of. And then you have this being depicted as love. Oh, somebody hurting you is love. It equates to love. So it gives you a warped sense of what love is or what love means.
In one of the chapters, you talk about going out of your way on Father's Day or birthdays to make special cards, beautifully wrapped presents, and leave it next to the bed for your father to see when he wakes up. What does that teach you about your need for love and your need for validation?
You know, when I was little, I always used to get so excited. I still do. When it's Father's Days or Mother's Days or whatever, because when you're small, you know, at school, you make these cute cards, and I always made it extra special. You put tinsel on it, take like old clothes and cut off material, put little bows and ties and whatever on the cards. And I was always so excited. I was really, really excited that when I gave it to my dad the next morning, I couldn't wait. I used to picture him, you know, coming to my room and saying, "Thank you so much, you know, this is so pretty," and whatever. And then I'd get up in the morning, go to his room, and he'd be gone. And the card would be lying there, or the gift would be open, and it would just be there. And I would make up the story in my head. Oh, no, he had to leave, he had to go to work or whatever. Even though I knew differently, I was awake the whole morning. And I didn't hear him say a thing, even to my mother, about the gift. And my mother sometimes would try to comfort me and say, "Oh, you know, he really loved it," whatever. But I knew he never said anything. I was listening the whole morning for it. She felt the need to cover for him and tell me that he did. One of the things I discovered was this need for me to overcompensate in every area of my life. And because of that, because I was always trying to get that validation, that confirmation that I was enough. So I always do more than what's needed. And while, you know, that has helped me in many, many areas of my life. It made me a very hard worker. It made managers that I work for see potential in me, pay for me to go for training and courses and take flights and everything else, because I was such a hard worker. And it took me from one level to the next level. And where it's helped me career-wise, I actually felt sometimes really, really depressed and sad by the fact that the people I was doing, that I loved and I cared about and I was doing so much for, they never reciprocated that. They never acknowledged that. Doing for family, for friends, for everybody else. And yet, when there were times that I needed that, they didn't show up. But I went out of my way for everyone in my life. And I guess I've realized how that has actually been to my detriment. I think I've done that for people that don't even deserve it, to be honest with you. I have since realized that this is a cycle in my life that I need to break, that I no longer need that validation. I no longer need people to like me, or that I have proven myself worthy to myself. Where I am today, I've worked really hard to get here. I've become the person that I am with a lot of hard work and a lot of effort. And I think that there's no need to overcompensate anymore. And I think that realization hit home for me.
Yeah, you spoke about family and close family friends, knowing about what's going on, but turning a blind eye. And now late in life, when you're starting to address this, they don't really want it to come out. It's a matter of, let's just keep it happening in the past, keep it there, and saying things like, you must just get over it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you say to people who think that this is something you can just get over?
Yo, look at my face. There's no getting over it. You just keep walking through, I think people do it for a number of reasons. I don't think it's always ill-intended when they do that. I think some people, especially when it's family, I think they have guilt for what you've gone through. And some people feel like, oh, I could have done something about it, and I didn't. So if you talk about it, then it's a reminder to me of what I didn't do, and guilt. Exactly. So that guilt and that shame is also felt by the people that maybe didn't go through it, but they knew you were going through it. They didn't know how to deal with it either. So I get that and I understand that. There's people that look at things and say, well, it happened and it's over. And it's easy when it's not your experience to say that. So you've known that I've done the work on it. Doesn't make it any less painful. The most frustrating thing is when people try to downplay your experience. When they try to tell you how you're supposed to feel, they weren't there. They didn't know. They don't understand it. But they're telling you how you should feel. Because I get if you don't want to talk about it. We don't have to talk about it. You don't have to listen to me when I'm talking about it. However, don't tell me I'm not allowed to feel what I feel. Don't tell me I'm not allowed to talk about it. It's my story. It's mine. And while I didn't have a choice before and I had to keep it to myself, I do have a choice now. And I choose to speak about it and I choose to shed light on it. Not because I want to hurt anyone else, not because I want to bring anybody down, but because there are many other people like me. Some that are currently going through this. And as we see right now, the amount of child abuse that's happening still in the world, that's actually increased, I think, over time. It's more important now, more than ever before, to be giving a voice to this so that we can find solutions.
What do you say to people who have had a different life experience with your abuser and then come and say, you must reconcile, you must give them a second chance? Did you do that?
Till today, people still try to convince me differently. Now, let me tell you, forgiveness is not forgetting. I can forgive someone. It doesn't take the experience away. It doesn't make the person look better to me. I'm giving forgiveness to free myself, not anyone else. And I think the challenge for me is I'm not saying that the person who abused me didn't have another side to them. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they weren't good to certain people, nice to certain people, because he was. He was very friendly to certain people. He had friends. He had people that really loved him. He was funny to them. He was joyful to them. And honestly, sometimes when he was in a good mood for a short period of time, even to me, he was funny and friendly and all of those kind of things. There were moments where he would take us to a shop and buy caramel bears, which was my favorite. And I'd have that moments with him. I'm not taking from that moments. I'm not saying he was all bad and no good. But what I don't like is people who try to make him all good and no bad. Having studied human behavior, I have a greater understanding to the anger that was inside of him and that he inflicted on me. I get that. I understand that. However, it doesn't make it right and it doesn't make it okay. And it doesn't make it fine in any kind of way. And I find it very insulting when people are trying to make you believe that that person loved you. It took me years to realize that's not what love feels like. Love is not that painful. Love does not hurt in that way. Love is not a condition of being punched into you. And it's the reason you don't want to hurt someone. It's not the reason why you do. I forgive him. I pray for him. I got to a point where I had a civil relationship with him. I greeted him. I mean, all the years I hugged him when I saw him. All the years I sat with him. The only difference was when I became clear about my relationship with him and what I wanted. And when I could accept him as he was and say, this is who he is. It's not this fictitious character I created in my head of this, the lies that I told myself about how happy he made me and all of that. When I could accept that this is the person that he is. And would I be friends with someone like that? Just asking myself, would I be friends? No. The answer would be no, I wouldn't. Would I accept that from anybody? No, I wouldn't. But he was my family. And so I existed in the space with him from having self-respect and knowing who I am and knowing that that's not who I am. So I showed up as the best version of me. In spite of how he treated me, I chose to walk into a room that he was in with respect. I chose to sit with him in a conversation we were all having. But I then knew when to keep quiet and when to speak. I knew that I no longer needed to overcompensate with him, so I didn't. I could now say no to things. Before I'd say yes for everything he wanted, I got to say no to things. This is very important for a lot of people and a lot of family members who have people who's been abused. Please stop trying to convince someone who was abused that the person is good and nice and kind and loving and all of those things. Please stop doing that. Let us decide how we want to have relationships with people. Let us decide what works for us. You do not need to try to convince people. We see the differences. We can see the person is different with someone else to how they are with us. It hurts even more, believe it or not, that someone is actually, that person that's abusing you is so loving to someone else. That hurts more because it makes you feel even more worthless. If you are in a family where you have seen someone being abused, if you know of someone's abuse, please, if you are friends with the abuser, nobody's asking you to do anything other than to not convince the person that they're abusing that they love them or that it's okay in any way or that they must be forced to make amends with someone.
You speak about the shift from hating your father to a point where you had a civil relationship with him. Can you talk about how you saw your own strength and purpose in that experience?
For me, when I learned that he had a lot of built up anger from his life, and I think I've mentioned this before to you, it was very strange because my father and his sister, the one that was in Australia, was the two that was beaten by their father. And in our family, myself and my eldest brother was the ones that were beaten in our family, not my middle brother. So that was the first thing that I realized was when I went to meet my aunt for the first time in Australia, and I met her for the first time, and she told me about her story, and what it was like I was reliving her story. That's what I felt like. I felt like, I'm actually in this family cycle. I'm part of it. When I started to learn about human behavior and understand it and see these cycles in action, I came to realize that, hang on, we're supposed to break these cycles. She never came back to South Africa. She never forgave her father. She never saw her mother again, her brothers, sisters, everybody. I was, I think, the last of, the family that actually got to be with her. And that was sad to me. And I thought, I don't want this to happen to me. I don't want to cut ties with my family. This is my brothers, my mother. I don't want that. I don't want to relive that. So I chose to break that cycle. And I chose that is not the life I wanted for me. And it's definitely not the life I wanted for my children. I wanted them to know my family. My parents didn't know any differently. They didn't know how to deal with the pain. They didn't know all these things. I now was starting to learn about it. And so if I was learning and I now knew better, I had to do better. And I had to apply these things and these principles I was learning to my own life. And I didn't want to be angry anymore. I was tired of being angry. I was tired of having this hatred around me. I wanted to let it go. I didn't want to form part of that cycle any longer. I wanted to break that cycle. I chose to show up in the only way I know how, and that's with love. And I know there was many people that said, oh, how can you go hug someone that treated you like that or whatever? It was easy for me because that's who I am. I hug everyone. I am, and I believe that love can change the world. I believe that if you love someone enough in the best way possible, that sometimes they can soften. And I think near the end of his life, I saw that softening. And I remember, before we left to India, I remember sitting with him on the bed and he was really sick. And I said to him, and you were there at the time, and I said to him, I forgive you. And I hope that Allah grants you Jannah, and know that I love you. And I remember he just cried.
He still battled to say, I love you.
He battled to say anything, but his tears meant something to me, because he was always a very hard man. And his tears meant something to me. And he was at his weakest space. And in that moment, I knew that before I left the country, I knew I was not going to see him again. I knew with my whole heart this was the last time. And I don't know if you remember, but I still made a joke with him, and I said, oh, well, I'm probably not going to be here when you go. So, just make a whiz around India and, blow my curtain or something, I'll know you left. Funny, my whole life, I always knew I wouldn't be present when my father died. I always knew that. So I needed to know that I got closure for myself. And I needed to know that even though he had a hard time in his life, and there were many things in his life that he had experienced that had caused so much of built up anger in him. It might sound crazy to people, but I wanted him to leave the world with love and not with hate, because I don't believe anybody should die that way. And I wanted to give him that gift. I wanted to give him that gift.
I know there are times where you write that you question God in depth.
Yes.
But other times you found strength in believing that you were a gift or the gift. What do you mean by that?
First, I asked Allah why. I had a very turmoil relationship with our maker, because obviously I was going through this, and I was like, you choose the families that we go into. Why did you choose this for me? I couldn't understand it. I was like, why would you do this to me? Like, why would you put me here? I didn't want to pray. I didn't want to do anything because I couldn't understand it. Now, my mother, she always read Quran in the house. Like, she always read Quran. She always made salah, all of that kind of thing. And I spent most of my time with my mom, So I saw this all the time. And I couldn't understand that even her was, she was also abused, but more, not physically, more emotionally. I couldn't understand, how does she keep going back to this creator of ours? He put me here. So I had lots of really major conversations with him. Like, I don't know why you did this. I think later on, when I didn't have anyone, in the stillness of my bedroom, in the quietness of my mind, there was prayer happening. There was talking to him. Over time, I felt comfort in that. There was this level of comfort that nobody else in the world knew what I was going through, but I could speak to him. Eventually, in all my wisdom, all the wisdom of the learnings of the years, I think I eventually looked and I realized, and I look at Tashrika and I go, Tashrika was my gift. At 19 years old, she was my reason for wanting to change, for wanting to be better, to be a better person, to have a better life, to give her a better life. She changed me in ways that I don't think many people can understand. She was a light to me that guided me to become a better person. I think in that realization, I realized, but hang on, Allah put me on this earth. He chose me as a gift to my father. That guiding light that Tashrika was, I was supposed to be for him. A child comes into the world and it softens our hearts. It makes us start looking at life differently. I think for you as well, it was the same thing. I was actually the gift for my father. I was supposed to soften his heart. I was supposed to change him in a way for the better. And I realized that when I wasn't changing him and things were getting worse and worse, and his tempers got worse and his beatings got harsher and his words got harsher, I think there came a point where I stopped feeling the beatings. I stopped feeling it. Like, he would tell me to cry. He'd beat me and I could not cry. And he'd scream at me, cry. And he used to tell me, I'm being hardigat, or, I don't know what's the right word, stubborn or whatever, purposefully. Because I'm trying to be, hard in this moment, whatever it was. And so he would scream at me to cry, and I could not cry, and I couldn't understand. And it was funny because I wasn't feeling it anymore. It was like I was numb to the pain. Later on, the bruises were there, the proof was there. He hit me, but I didn't feel it. And that, I think, was Allah's protection over me. When this gift thing didn't work, He didn't quite see the gift, Allah made me stronger. He gave me the protection layer that I needed to be able to endure. That is how I have now since viewed it and looked and said, but I was the gift. I wasn't the curse. I wasn't the problem. I was the solution. But that solutions, like we all know, we don't always see it. I think that our Creator gives us experiences to teach us, gives us these little gifts, and sometimes we miss it, we don't see it. We lose that opportunity to be better people and to change our lives. That's what has happened for me, is me being able to be given the gift of my daughter at such a young age. And for me to have realized that, hang on, she's here to help me change my life, to be a better person, to do better in my life. And that is all that I wanted to do. And that had driven me. And so has each of my other kids done the same for me. And so I know with certainty now that I was the gift.
One of the words often used was BITCH. And for many years, you had a total, very strong reaction whenever you heard this word. But at some point, you reclaimed this word as empowered. Can you share how redefining the word has empowered you and the difference it's made?
Now, I've heard men call women BITCH many times in my life. Many times. And before, when I heard it, even if a friend was saying it funny, just for a joke, or I heard people saying it, I got on my high horse and I would go at them, because I hated that word. That word just triggered me. I put that word down and it said, well, why do somebody call you that? Why would at what points do people call you this word? And I realized people call you this word at the point when you are not doing what they want you to do, or living life the way they think you should live. Then suddenly this is what you... And I thought about that. If somebody's calling me that, then it means that I'm living life according to how I want to live it. Isn't that a good thing? And then I started realizing, hang on, this is actually quite empowering to me now. Because I was called that because I wasn't listening. I was doing life my way. I was doing it the way I wanted to do it. Now, if somebody comes and, call me a BITCH, I say thank you. Because it reminds me that I'm still living life on my terms. And so it irritates you because you need to control me. And you can't control me. And now suddenly that's what I am. So I've managed to empower myself through that word and to realize that word, any word, in fact, I think that people are using to describe you, you got to break it down. You got to ask why they're calling you this. Because they're calling you this based on their own stuff, not your stuff. It's got nothing to do with you.
You had an incredibly traumatic childhood, and yet you've managed to raise 3 amazing, well-adjusted young adults. Are there any lessons that you took from your childhood and applied to being a parent?
I think I learned from my mom, some that I learned on my own through watching other people. I always wanted my children to have the freedom to be who they are because I didn't have it. It was intentional with me to have that. And I remember specifically saying this to myself, and I was young. I was nowhere near having children. I think I must have been like 10 or 11, and I thought to myself, one day when I have a daughter, I'm going to let her be whatever she wants to be. And I am going to, everything that I couldn't do at that time, I wanted her to do, I thought to myself, I'm going to let her do whatever she wants to do with her life. And I'm not going to stop her. And I'm going to love her no matter what. I am going to love her. She is going to feel loved by me. And obviously I said she because it's based on me, It's not, it doesn't take away from my sons at all because they're amazing young men and I love them to bits. But for me, it was a daughter because, so my brothers get to do whatever they want. But because I was a girl child, I couldn't. There was a lot of things I couldn't do because I was a girl child. I looked at my life and I looked at the things that held me back. And then I wanted to give that to my kids. But at the same time, I didn't want them to grow up without challenges. I didn't want them to grow up, in a little cocoon. So, which is why I did so much of charity work with them, which is why I took them to so many, different charitable things, them to be a part of that. I wanted them to know that there's people with real challenges in the world. So I didn't want to safeguard them from that. And also when they were going through challenges at school, whether it was, Isham or Tashrika or Amir, I also wanted to give them the space to navigate that on their own first before I got involved, and involve myself only when and if they needed me to be involved in certain things. So I wanted them to figure things out for themselves, because I realized that helped me in my life. That didn't hurt me. And I think a lot of parents today are trying to safeguard their kids from everything. And it really doesn't help them. And I wanted to raise my kids with that. And I think that is why my parenting, like your new word is, intentional. It was not default parenting. How do I be a part of the solution, not a part of the problem? Because I don't want to be that. And this is what I try to teach, and this is what I try to showcase to people. And if anybody wants proof that it's possible, then here I am.
Yeah. When you think back over your journey, what gives you the greatest sense of pride?
I think knowing that when I was 19 and I had my child, that nobody had believed that a child could raise a child, basically. When I look at my 3 kids today, Tashrika, the most kind and light-filled child, become a fashion designer, so hardworking, so filled with exudes light. Hisham, neuropsychologist, calm, collected, so put together. Such a wise and kind man, young man. I look at Amir, the most loving, physically loving child, can hug me to death, who has talents way beyond what I could ever imagine, from acting to theatrics to videography to DJing, graduating with flying colors from school. I am so proud, not just of what these kids have made with their lives, but who they've become. That wanting children who has good character, that's what my intention was in raising them. I wanted them to be raised with good character, and I achieved that. I wanted to have a close-knit family. I wanted my kids to grow up as best friends. They did. They are best friends. And I wanted to create a loving family for them. And we've done that. And so I am most proud that I could break that cycle of abuse that was in my family and change it for the family that we have now. And that I can look at my kids and know that that cycle's broken. I can know that with certainty. That cycle, it's gone. It is no longer part of this family. I have changed the trajectory of my family's history. And that I am most proud of.